the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets trembling, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land under the fray, and the home of the brave?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Freedom Network. I'm Gary Rosenberg, your host. Thank you so much for joining us once again right here on the Freedom Network. It's great to be here. We got a lot going on. We have a lot going on. We got to jump right in tonight because we've got a lot of stuff going on. We have a busy night. timorgary@gmail.com. Telephone number 508-266-0990. Both of which are right there on your screen if you do choose to use them. You can certainly communicate with us, open lines all the time. Send an email for links to our Facebook destinations. We've got a couple of them. Just send me an email. I'll send you a link. We have a busy night. A few minutes, we're going to be, hopefully, we'll be joined by Barbara Anderson, and we'll be talking about, she's been on with us a few times, and we love to have her on. Tonight, we're going to discuss the caucuses in Iowa and get her take on what happened. Later, we're going to be joined by Bunny Rydell from American Community Television. We'll discuss what's going on, local cable affairs, and let you know what her group is all about. We'll get some updates and things like that. One email, though, I did want to share with you today, and then we will get going right here on the Freedom Network, that I did want to toss out there. I got an email from a kid that's 16 years old. Not going to give his name, obviously, or anything about him, but this is the second or third email that I've got in this vein, and I like to share them with you when I do get them. So I'm going to take a few precious moments of our time to go over his email. It said, "Hi, Gary. My dad watches your show all the time. One day he said to me to shut my video game and come over to him, and I did. And he said, sit down and watch this. He had paused the TV, and it's amazing that we can pause TV now, isn't it? And when I sat down, he hit play. It was you. You were on TV, and you were going off about the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, and how much freedom we have lost. You kept my attention, and as I watched, I started to think, what is this guy talking about? What does he mean? I am free. I feel free. This guy is crazy. But you challenged me to read and research, and you said one thing that really made me think. You asked, and I quote, if you are in school in most any grade, please tell me how many times your teachers had you read and learn about the Constitution. I do remember actually saying that. My answer was I never read it. So I never read it start to finish, and I really have not learned too much about it so far in school. So after I watched your program, after I watched and asked my dad if I could leave, I went back to my video games. When I went up to bed that night, I did look up the Constitution. I printed it. I then looked up the Federalist Papers, and I printed those. Gary, you owe me some money on the Federalist Papers. They're a lot longer than the Constitution. They are. Then I read and read and read. Fascinating and amazing. My dad asked me a few days later if I still thought that I was free or felt free. I realized just how far we were from what the original goal was for America. I still struggle with certain things in politics, and I don't really know what it's all about or how I feel about all the issues, but I wanted to email you and thank you for what you did excuse me, for me. I now have read the Constitution 3 times and still have questions, but the Federalist Papers just blew my mind when you read them and use them both together. Thanks, Gary. Well, folks, this is what this is why I do it. This is why I'm here every week. This is the reason I do the show. I want to thank you for your email, and you know who you are. And keep in touch with the show. Always welcome. Your kind words do mean a lot to me. And this, folks, is what the Freedom Network is really all about. That's what the Freedom Network's about. It's getting people to think about America, what America means, where we are, where we were, and where we're supposed to be. And I can't thank you enough for the email. It's humbling. Anyway, all right, let's see. Can we get Barbara on the news line? We were able to get her? You working on it? All right, we'll get her. Anyway, I wanted to talk about the Hawkeye Cockeye, as they call it, the caucuses that were in Iowa. We had a lot of, there's a couple of interesting things. I did notice that the Republicans did add up to 100%, but the Democrats added up to 101% when you add up all the vote percentages. I don't know how you get 101% of anything, but there was, there's some numbers that we can go over and some things that we can certainly talk about. I will tell you, I'm upset about my guy. You know my guy. My guy is, or was, I guess you should say, was Rand Paul. We won't be. I won't be able to vote for Rand, I don't believe. But it leaves me in a real quandary. We'll see what others think about that. Obviously, Cruz won it with a little over 27.5%. He gets 8 delegates. Trump and Rubio each get 7 delegates. That's what they get at 24.3 and 23.1, very close. And he was really a big show in this. All right, let's get on the news line. See, we have 2 phones here today, folks. We have 2 phones here today. That's right. On the Freedom Network, we have to always have all of our phones available and all of our communications available. Anyway, I believe on the news line we have Barbara Anderson. Barbara, are you there?
I am here, Gary. Am I like a regular now?
You are slowly becoming a regular, and let me tell you,
That would be so cool.
the viewers of the Freedom Network love it. You produce so many emails when you are on. I just want you to know that. We really do appreciate having you on. I wanted you to come on today. We were talking a little bit, reading a little bit on Facebook. I mean, it was quite an exciting night the other night in Iowa. What was your take on it, Barbara?
I don't know. I just can't stop laughing. I mean, who ever expected anything like this? As crazy as politics has always been, this is insane. And yet there's something about it that is just so freedom-loving. So everybody jumping in and getting involved and supporting their candidates and not listening to anybody who they're supposed to listen to. And for me, as I think I may have told you before, it's incredible to me that it is February in an election year and I don't have a bumper sticker on my car for my candidate yet because I can't decide either.
It's amazing. It really is tight. I'm going to be honest with you. Rand Paul was my guy. I don't think I'll be able to vote for Rand anymore. I'm not quite sure what to do. I like we've talked about before. It's interesting. Clinton's got 23 delegates now, and Sanders has got 21. I think Sanders did really well, to be honest with you. But it was interesting to see. Why didn't Bush drop out yet? Why is Kasich still in it? What are these folks doing? Did Huckabee drop out today, right? Didn't he?
Did he? He should have if he didn't.
I think he's gone, and I think Santorum's gone, and Christie will soon go. It seems as though Bush just won't go away. I hear he spent $70 or $80 million or something like that in a very short time, and he came up with 2.8%. When does Bush give up?
Well, I think if you start with the question, why was he there in the first place? Because I remember his mother's immediate response, which was the same of mine as mine was, no more Bushes. And suddenly somebody talked him into it, probably the consultants who were making a fortune off raising money for him. And so he's still there, as confused about being there as he was in the beginning, I think. I would not write off Kasich. Kasich, I think, is going to do very well in New Hampshire. And probably second. So he's still in the race, and he could become the favorite of the establishment people once they realize that Rubio is unelectable.
Yeah.
And then, of course, for our beloved Rand Paul, in the beginning, he seemed to be a good candidate. I thought this would be the year for a libertarian to win as the economy slowly starts collapsing, and you have to start cutting. And only libertarians like Rand and Cruz would have the stomach for doing what you have to do. But then ISIS got involved and made it difficult for him on foreign policy. And by the time he found his sea legs there, he just wasn't catching up. But I am so glad he dropped out and will stay in the Senate. We are going to need him in the Senate.
Yes, that's very true. He's absolutely an ally of freedom. That's for darn sure. I don't know what to do now. I'm like you. I don't do a lot of bumper stickers, but I go out publicly. I know a lot of hosts don't love to go out, or they say they don't endorse people. I don't care about that. You know, I always stand on my own 2 feet in my opinions. But you know, I've been reading about allegations tonight by Trump that the Cruz campaign stole the election. He says it's fraud. Email in the Cruz circles read, and I do quote, "The press is reporting that Dr. Carson is taking time off from the campaign trail after Iowa and making a big announcement next week." This is what the Cruz email read. That was according to CNN. Please inform any Carson caucus goers of this news and urge them to vote for Ted Cruz. So then Trump tweets out, many people voted for Cruz over Carson because of this Cruz fraud. And Wednesday afternoon, a little while ago, Cruz responded saying yet another Trump tantrum, you know, all that kind of stuff. What do you think? Is there any validity to that?
I thought part of it was the problem we've had with Ben Carson all along, and I love that man. How can you not love that man?
He's great.
He's naive. He's new at this, at politics, and so they make mistakes like tweeting that they're going to go get a change of clothes in Florida right in the middle of the voting in Iowa. I mean, they send out this tweet, and the Trump people jumped on it and took advantage of something that was in front of them. It seems to me that's what campaigns do. And if it did advantage them, and I can't see where they knew it was going to advantage them any more than Rubio. I think it's one of the reasons Rubio got as close to Cruz as he did. So, yeah, it was a campaign dirty trick, I suppose. Except they probably thought he really was going to drop out. Because why would Carson's people put out a tweet like that in the middle of Omaha? You know, or in the middle of Iowa. It's just, you know, somebody texted a talk show and they said, these people who are whining and carrying on about what happened, what kind of game do they think we're playing here? This is politics.
You know,
everybody.
It's true. I mean, you know, Carson on his end did join the tweeting, I guess, shameless tactics and dirty political plays, he says, defined yesterday's caucus using the popular hashtag to refer to voting. It was the hashtag IA caucus. There is no place for this kind of behavior. I mean, you know, if true, I guess the real question is do his, you know, do Carson's supporters run to Cruz? Do you think that's where they go? Where do you think that some of this, as these guys dry up on the bottom of the list, Bush included, where do you think they wind up? Do they wind up with Cruz, with Trump, or do they go a little further to the left, if you will, and grab a guy like Rubio?
I would think they would have gone to all three of them. You know, some would have gone to Trump, some would have gone to Cruz, and some would have gone to Rubio. They weren't going to do anything that would hurt Ben Carson's chances to win the Iowa caucus. You know, he wasn't going to win that anyhow.
Right.
And he really is in over his adorable little head. He really is. I hope he stays involved. I hope someone puts him in the cabinet in charge of health care. But he doesn't belong in a presidential race at this point in his life.
Yeah.
And so he sort of sounds like he's going to drop out, which wouldn't be an unreasonable thing for him to do. And the Cruz people jumped on it to use it. However, in the midst of all the passion that is the entire day in Iowa, and I thought these staffers were doing their job.
Yeah.
That's how I would see it.
You know what? I guess I would go along with that, Barbara. I mean, you know, what are they supposed to do? Not try to monopolize on it. I guess the sticky point comes in whether it was really true or whether it really wasn't true, and you know, kind of how they went about it. But to be honest with you, delegate-wise, you've got one guy, Cruz, who's got 8, and then you've got Trump and Rubio with 7. I think Rubio had a good showing. I do think he had a good showing. Makes me a little bit nervous. I don't want to slide that far to the left, to be quite honest with you, if that's the conservatives' idea. But do we put too much on Iowa, Barbara? Does Iowa really mean much? I mean, Reagan didn't win it.
I'm going to say this because I don't often take such an intense dislike to somebody. And yes, I will vote for Rubio over Hillary or the socialist, okay?
Me too.
I can't stand Rubio. And what did it for me was the very first debate when he was asked a question about abortion, something that both Cruz and Trump had sense enough not to answer. And he answered it along with Walker and said that, yes, he was pro-life and he would not support any exceptions, including the life of the mother. Now, this is on tape. This is recorded by the Democrat Party. It's going to be in an ad in a general election should he be the candidate. Therefore, with Rubio, we cannot win. So we cannot choose him to be our primary supporter. That is an unforgivable position to those independent women we must attract in the general election. So Rubio should be gone.
Yeah, you
And
know,
I will not support him in the primary as long as I have one other candidate standing. And there we are.
yeah, you know what, Barbara? I'm going to say I tend to agree with you. I'm not looking to elect a minister. I'm looking to elect a president. And I think that Trump does a great job of not trying to be my spirit. I think Cruz dips his toes in those waters. But let's face it, you're in Iowa. And you're trying to get the Republican nomination, right? So you're trying to get Republicans to vote for you. That's the audience they play to. Then the media takes this and they blow it up. But do you think that Clinton doesn't pander to the people in there? I mean, how many people were there? Was it 180,000? I heard some kind of a figure like that.
It was a record.
Yeah, it was a huge record. So that should have, I thought, helped Trump. But I'm going to tell you something. Cruz did a heck of a job getting his people mobilized out there. He was organized. He spent money. He spent time. And I think that looking at the fact that we're told that Trump is the great organizer, the great businessman, the great, you know, that kind of stuff, I thought that it fell a little bit short to be outwitted when you say you're the wittiest guy on the podium, I guess.
Yeah, well, he's new at this, just like Ben Carson. He's new at running for president, while Cruz is a professional, and he knew exactly what he needed to do, and I've been hoping that Rand Paul would have been able to pull that out as well.
Yes.
But, that didn't work out for us, and I'm open to Cruz. I mean, you talk about your minister. He keeps quoting scripture, and I just think he's faking it. And maybe that's not a nice thing to be doing either. But, again, what do you do with primary voters who are so fundamentalist, so so religious? You have to pander, I guess, which this is why I could never run. Wouldn't pander, couldn't win. So what do you do?
Yeah, it's, you know what, I would have to agree with you. I think that you have to, and I think that Trump didn't. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of okay with that with Trump, that he didn't, sacrifice the general tenor of his campaign to try to get a win in one state. And at the end of the day, he's only one delegate behind. It's not as though he's even, in a duality. So, I think the biggest thing, and I know you got to get going soon, but how about Bernie Sanders? I mean, he really had Hillary biting her nails. When I add up the percentage points, Barbara, the Democrats do come to 100.1% as a total, which I don't understand. And I added up the Republicans, and it came right out to 100%. But anyway, that's the Democrat Party, I guess, for you. But Sanders comes away with 21 delegates, 49.6% of the vote is what I got, and she got 49.9. So you're talking about a third of a point. I mean, I think he did pretty well. This isn't his first rodeo, and he's never even had traction like this. What do you think?
I love Bernie Sanders. I really do. I just sort of associate myself with all of those Democrats who are rebelling against their party leadership, just as the Republicans are rebelling against their party leadership. The people out here are fed up with the Clintons and the Bushes and the party leadership and the establishment people. And if the Democrats are willing to elect a communist, then why are we just quibbling over, someone like Trump? Who should talk about religion? The funniest line in this whole campaign is the joke, 2 Corinthians walked into a bar. Because if you remember, he tried quoting scripture, and instead of saying 2 Corinthians, as the ecumenicals say, he said 2 Corinthians.
Right.
And that showed he doesn't read the Bible a lot, or doesn't quote it a lot.
No, and I think he wears that as a badge.
Yeah.
I
and
think
so
that...
now the joke is just one line. 2 Corinthians walked into a bar, which just doubles me over.
Yes. I read something on a blog, and then I researched it out a little bit. It had to do with that such a large majority of people that are voting for Sanders equate his being a social democrat to his being a communist. And I took that and looked at the numbers at 49.6% of the party that we call the Democrat Party today. And if these young people think he's a communist, Barbara, and they're voting for him almost by the half, what does that say about people that are really supporting that? You can say what you want about the right and the religious right. Well, what about the non-religious right, the non-freedom wing, the people that embrace a communist that actually, when they polled out, that said, yeah, I think he's like a communist. He's a socialist. He's a communist. He's into that kind of stuff. But yet, they're still voting for him at half. At half.
Oh, these young people don't know what a communist is. I mean, the Berlin Wall came down when they were in grade school. So they don't even know what these words mean. But the truth is, that the Democrat Party really is socialist. The leadership, the establishment people, don't really want to have that discussion right now, because once the rest of the country finds out what socialism is and decide they don't really want to go that far, even though they want a welfare state and all of that, then that's not going to be a good thing for their candidate this year. So they're horrified by Bernie Sanders. I think it's great we're having this discussion. Let's have it.
Yeah. You know what, Barbara? I think you're 100% right. I mean, I don't want to see either of them as the president. But I will say, if I don't not vote, I never not vote. I always say to everybody, if you're ever belonging to a group, a page, a this or a that, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, whatever it is, and people are advocating and say to you, don't vote. To me, that's the enemy. I don't care if they perceive themselves to be on the right or perceive themselves to be on the left. To me, that's 100% irrelevant. If you say to people, don't vote, then I think that you're probably an enemy of freedom, maybe in disguise, maybe not in disguise. When I look at that, if I had to vote for either Sanders or Clinton, I mean, I would be beside myself. I guess I would have to punish myself somehow, but I think I might vote for Sanders if that was my only choice. How can anyone vote for Hillary Clinton?
Well, that won't be a choice, because there will be a Republican running
Thank
too.
God.
We don't know which one.
Thank God.
We'll always have another choice between either Sanders or Clinton. But you're right. If I had to spend the next 4 years listening to Hillary Clinton, I not only would I had to turn off the television. I'd have to block myself out from all communications with the outside world.
Yes, just take take a sabbatical for 4 years, come back, and hope that there's something to come back to. Barbara, I have had at least, I'd say, 10 or 12 emails come in. They love you out there on the Freedom Network continuously. They keep thanking you. Thank you for Prop 2.5. Thank you for Prop 2.5. Someone here from Northbridge emails in. Gary, tell Barbara, thank you for Prop 2.5. If it wasn't for her, my taxes would be as high as Grafton's. We're a low tax town. A lot of people take pride in that. And out here, Barbara, they love you. I know you got to get going. I thank you so much for being on the Freedom Network. Be a regular, Barbara, anytime you want. We'd love to have you on.
Great. Thanks a lot.
All right, Barbara.
Everyone.
That's Barbara Anderson. It's CLT. We always know, just Google it. Google CLT. That's how you're going to find them. It's the easiest way to get a hold of them. They have groups and pages and whatever you want. You want to get a hold of these folks. Let me tell you, these are the people that make a difference. When you say to yourself, if you don't know who Barbara Anderson is, when you say to yourself, why do I have to go to vote against an override, or why do I have to go vote for an override if you would not have that option one way or the other if Barbara Anderson didn't do what she did. She's been a long time person that I met and started to get involved with them. This was back when the seatbelt law was going on. It was after her endeavors, obviously, with the Prop 2.5. And what a class organization, and just about the people. And like they've even said, and we had Chip Faulkner on, if you remember, not too long ago, from CLT. If people want to raise taxes, that's okay. If that's what they want to do, one may support it, one may not. But let the people decide. And Barbara was instrumental in that. So we're always honored to have her as a Freedom Network contributor, coming on the program, being involved, because I'll tell you something, folks. Your life would be different in this state if that woman didn't do what she did. So to all your emails, I got them all. We send the accolades out there, and off we go. So now let's talk about cable. Let's talk about cable. We'll move on for a minute. I'll keep my cheat sheet here in case anybody. I see a few emails coming in real quick. Bush got 2.8% of the vote. He gets one delegate. He spent, I think, close to $75 million for one delegate. Great job. Great job. Get out of the race. All you guys, just get out of the race. And Carson, he still comes in with 3 delegates. He had almost 10% of the vote, or over 9% of the vote anyway. We'll see what happens with that. Anyway, cable, lots happening with cable. There's a lot going on with cable. There's a lot going on with cable here in Northbridge, where we broadcast from in this wonderful studio. And there's also a lot going on in cable around the state, around the country, really. And we're going to get Bunny, I think, online. If we have Bunny, we do have Bunny. We already have Bunny online. See, this is great. Things just flowing really well tonight, aren't they? All right, let me go on the line here. I press this button. This should give me access to Bunny Rydell. Bunny, are you there?
I am so here.
I am so glad, Bunny, that you are there. Here we are on the Freedom Network. We've spoke before. We've talked about cable a lot. Tell people real quick, give them the quick synopsis. Who are you? How do people get a hold of you? Where are your websites? All that kind of stuff. Let's get some of that information out there right away.
Oh, that's really awesome. Well, I'm executive director of American Community Television. And basically, what we do is advocate and educate on Capitol Hill, almost exclusively regarding public ed and government access television. We are very small. We don't have the money that the cable operators do. And in fact, when I go to the Hill, I'm one of maybe 2 or 3 people who go up to the Hill to advocate for public access. And there are 600 cable lobbyists. So you can imagine we're a little outnumbered. But at the same time, that's what we do. And our website is acommunitytv.org, acommunitytv.org. And we're working on a bill right now called the Community Access Preservation Act. It's in the Senate, and we're trying to get this thing passed to protect public educational and government access, because we think that community media is so important to our local communities.
And you know what? I'll tell you, Donna, it really is important. We know we've been doing community television here on the Freedom Network for several years. Mm-hmm. We've done it over the course of a couple of different towns, studios.
Right.
And I will tell you that it is a fantastic medium. I have been involved in radio. I've been on public. I've very little, a lot of private, privately owned radio stations and stuff like that. One thing that I love about what we can do here is there's no content control. This is the people's network. That's what it is. We can put whatever we want on. We could have a left-wing Bernie Sanders liberal communist type of a guy come right on over here and do his own program right after the Freedom Network. And you know what? That's okay. And it should be.
It is America's soapbox, public access is. And government access to me is critically important, to be able to have a window onto what our local governments are doing. We got C-SPAN and other such things, but to really get down to what our local government is doing, government access is so important when they bring you those meetings live and you can watch it.
Absolutely.
And then educational access is absolutely terrific. We've got universities, community colleges, K through 12. I think my favorite in educational access is the K through 12 channels, because you get times when you've got kids, 6th graders, who are producing television shows. Or my favorite is the after-school homework call-in show.
I could have used that when I was in 6th grade.
Wow, that is really cool. That is really cool. I mean, that's great. So tell me, and I want to talk a little bit about Northbridge specifically.
Yeah.
And I know that you got a lot going on in other communities and things of that nature. But we had spoke, I believe, the last time, and you had touched on something that I wanted to explore a little bit. A fund of some kind that they have, right?
Sure, we can talk about that.
What is that fund? Can you talk to our listeners about? We've had some emails on it. I don't have a lot of information on what it is or what it's supposed to be used for. But what is it, and what's it supposed to be used for?
Well, it's on your cable bill. You will see it. They have to break it out. It's on the cable bill, and it's 8 or 9 cents per month. It doesn't sound like a lot, but if you consider there's about 80 million cable households in this country, that's a good chunk of change at the end of the year. It's about $60-70 million that the FCC collects for the specific purpose of cable regulation. And, my question really is, where's the cable regulation? The news of the day, which none of your followers or watchers is going to find astounding, is that their cable rates are going up again. Like every year, it's about 6%. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 7, but they're going up. And it's not. A lot of times, if you look at the video, you don't see that. What you see is the rate increases come in the equipment, because the equipment's getting more and more expensive. But that fee that your viewers are paying, and they are paying it, that is supposed to go to regulate cable. And that's a lot of money, and I've never been able to figure out what the FCC does with it.
I mean,
Certainly don't regulate cable.
I mean, is there a budget or something that we can find? Is there? I mean, look, I mean, in government, I know that $60 million may not be a ton of money, but, the reality is that that's a whole ton of money. And you have cable, like we have cable issues right here in Northbridge, where we have people that have issues with cable. Should that money, or can that money be accessed, or is it supposed to be accessed? And what would you use that money for? What would actually be done with it?
Well, when we filed our comments in the Charter Time Warner, that buy, where Charter's buying Time Warner, when we filed our comments, we specifically laid out various instances of things that Charter had done around the country to local communities, also to access channels. And one of the things we actually said in our comments was, how about you take some of that money, set up some kind of a panel, so that when local communities like Northbridge, who don't necessarily have the resources to take Charter to court, they can at least come to the FCC, file their complaint with you, get a judgment from you, which, may be non-binding, but the more of those things we can add up, the more it does help us when we have communities that are able to actually take Charter into court over, non-compliance with a contract. We put that in our comments.
What now?
You're collecting that money. How about doing something with it?
It would be nice, wouldn't it?
Right, it would be very nice.
Donna, so talk to me now. Let's talk about Northbridge.
Yep.
Let's talk about Northbridge a little bit. What is the? We've obviously got some issues here with Charter. We have a lot of unsatisfied customers.
Yep.
And to be honest with you, there's a lot of things happening. Even with my cable, what's happening? I'm getting situations where. It flashes out. It says subscribe to this channel. Then it comes back. We know that they moved the stations here. We know that we've had some back and forth with the office that they kept here. What's going on with Charter? What do you think the chances are that we could just not have Charter anymore around here? I don't really hear a lot of positive things about the company.
Well, and having been watching, cable companies since about 1998, and really seriously I have, Charter really is the worst. And we see this across the country. It's not just you guys, okay? They really do treat communities and subscribers the worst I've ever seen. And I think there's a certain amount of arrogance in the corporate culture that says, well, we don't have to do these things because we're so big. What's a town the size of Northbridge going to do? In the Northbridge instance, you've got serious, clear breach of contracts. Now, these are legal, binding contracts. Gary, if you breach a contract or I breach a contract, we go to court and a judge looks at the contract and says, yeah, that's what the contract said. You've got to comply with it. But, they count on the fact that smaller communities don't have the money to necessarily litigate every single little thing, and they just run roughshod over smaller communities. We've had instances where charters have been sued. Certainly in California, there have been some larger communities that have sued them, and those cases have gone on for years. So they just kind of basically, their attitude and their corporate culture is, who cares? We're going to get it. Might as well do it. We're going to get away with it anyway. And to me, it's outrageous. As the list goes on for Northbridge, it becomes outrageous. The fact that the public access manager walked into the station one morning and discovered his channels had been slammed from 11, 12, and 13 up to the 190s without being notified, without being told about, that is outrageous behavior. It's a breach of contract. I hear now they're going to move they've already moved the service office from Northbridge to Grafton, and now they're going to move it over to Worcester. So anybody in that Northbridge, Grafton area, now they've got to drive, 14, 15 miles to go to Worcester to turn in a box, or like us not long ago, we just swung by the Comcast office to turn in the remote control because it wasn't working. But now you got to make a nice schlep over there to get your new remote control. And then there's this whole question about them charging the public access channel for boxes. Maybe they were going to charge them for boxes, and now they seem to have backed off. There was an article, I guess, in the Telegram, and afterwards they kind of did a mea culpa. But this is the kind of things that they do in every community that I've ever seen charter operate. It's really outrageous.
Yeah,
I think the last time I was on, I talked about the instance where they walked into police and fire departments in Missouri and pulled the cable drops.
Really?
You know what I mean?
Wow.
Who would do that? What corporation would say, here, let me make a big blunder by going after the police and fire department?
You know what it is, Bunny? What it is it's the it's at the end of the day, what it really is it's the lack of competition that allows them to run the way that they run. When they deregulated, let's say, the phones, remember we had phones, and when I was a kid, there was one phone company. You couldn't get long distance from other companies. There was just one bill. That's what you paid. They broke that all up. Are they gonna? Why can't we have and how do you get another cable company to want to come to your town? What is it that you got to do to create some competition?
Right. Well, and that's very tough because there's only a few competitors. First of all, the big ones aren't going to compete with each other. Okay? So Time Warner, Comcast, Charter, Bright House Networks, they're not going to compete with one another. They've got their territory staked out. They swap properties from time to time, and that's about it. You have to have an instance. There's a few places like out in the Midwest where you have CenturyLink is an operator, and you also have Comcast as an operator. You might have a third operator. There are few, like around here, Verizon came through here, and so now people do have a choice between Verizon and Comcast. But that's very rare, and it's really dependent upon, the company is going to go after the low-hanging fruit. That's what they always go for.
Right.
So no new entrant is going to come in unless they know they're going to be able to sweep up as much of that low-hanging fruit and make money as quickly as they possibly can. And so they did that here in Maryland. They've done it in Northern Virginia, and there are a few places here and there where Verizon is actually a competitor. Places in California, Verizon is a competitor to the incumbent. But that just doesn't happen much. And certainly now that AT&T for a while was acting like it was going to be a competitor, but now they've bought DirecTV.
Right.
They're never not going to provide any more landline video. It's not going to happen. It's just going to be, you'll have AT&T phone service, AT&T internet, and you'll get DirecTV. So it's tough because, there are places where in Pennsylvania, they were trying to start municipal cable operations, and the state legislature shut it down and said, no, you can't do that. Those lobbies are big. Certainly, in Capitol Hill, they hear from the cable industry a lot more than they hear from me. There's no doubt about it. I can't run fast enough to keep up with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. It absolutely gets crazy, and I think of it the same way that you did. There's a contract. It is what it is. If you don't like the contract,
right.
You can certainly try to change the contract when it comes up. But I sign a contract with them, and to pay my bill every month. And if I just said to them one month, well, you know what, I'm not going to pay my bill. And that's what or I'm going to pay you instead of $287 or $312, I'm going to pay you $187.
That's right.
They would say, you can't do that because this is your bill, this is the contract. So how is it that, why is it not just an absolute, why are they so brazen that they would just say, well, we're going to move the stations anyway, or we're going to move an office if they, and I don't know the specifics of every detail in there, but I do know that in that contract it said channels X, Y, and Z,
Yes,
and they
it-
took and moved them. Well, I mean, how is there not, why are they so, is it because of the power they have in Washington?
Well, that's part of it, but also on the ground. And I actually really herald these stories to the folks on Capitol Hill. I'm getting ready to work on an article. I think I'm going to call it the chartering of Northbridge. But I'm going to also outline what they've done in Missouri and they've done in Montana and various other places where they've just done outrageous things. But at the end of the day, there's no consequence. There's no consequence because I used to joke that Time Warner could sue you into the grave. Well, so can Charter. They can string it out, and they can string out these laws. And that's what we see with the cable operators. Even if you sue them, they string out those lawsuits forever and ever, amen, with new, discoveries and so on and so forth, that it takes years to get any of these to come to any kind of a settlement. And I think they know that. I know that they know that, and so consequently, they're able to, operate with impunity and say, well, too bad. It's what we did. Live with it.
Yeah, and that's from what I can understand, I think
Same.
that's pretty much where we're at with it. I mean,
I believe, and it's going back to the FCC thing at the beginning of the conversation, is I believe that part of the function of the FCC has got to be a mediator in these instances, especially with
Absolutely.
these small communities, and maybe at some point or another put together a list of fines. They fine the telephone companies. They fine the broadcasters. We see that happening all the time. But they don't fine the cable operators. And I think the cable operators, need to be fined for, their conduct in using the public rights of way.
yeah, I mean, something has to happen. We can't just allow and that's what I always say. And I'm a very libertarian kind of a person, but I do believe there's a place for government, limited, but it does exist. And I think that when we see the people being taken advantage of without the reality of capitalism, there's no capitalism in cable. It's monopolies. And like you say, maybe you can get two in there. I'd like to see it like cell phones, where I have a plethora of people that I can choose from,
Yeah.
where people fight for my business because they want my money. Not that they're guaranteed it, or go to Dish, or go to Satellite, or you know what, go get the kooky little box because we made it all modern now, and you need a box to even get
Right.
your digital TV and have your 8 stations and enjoy it, or come and pay me $300 so you can really enjoy life. The whole thing is just, to me, it's absolutely out of control, Bunny.
Well, it's out of control, and also what's really out of control, and this is something that may shock, and if you've got business people in your audience, you probably do. This is going to shock some of your business people, okay?
Go ahead.
Their net profit is 50 to 60%. Just sit on that for a minute, okay?
Their net, huh?
Because that means at the end of the day, after they've paid all of their bills, they walk away with a net profit of 50 to 60%. So that also shows you there's no good rhyme or reason why these cable bills should be going up on average 6% every single year. There's no good rhyme or reason for it. Comcast is so wealthy that I've been in their skyscraper in Philadelphia. It's about 50 stories tall. Well, guess what? Right next door to that skyscraper, they're building a new skyscraper that's going to be somewhere between 80 to 90 stories tall.
Wow. It's
You know what I mean?
unbelievable. You know what? It's Bunny.
And I don't mind, make money, but don't mess up people while you're making money.
Well, I think that you can do both. I think they can have 80-story skyscrapers, and I think that they can compete a little bit with each other, and I think that they can certainly give people a little bit more of a fair shake when it comes to it. And at the very least, even if we're signing a contract that we know we're screwed with,
Yeah.
at least honor the contract that was probably crappy to begin with. You know, at least maybe you could honor that, or you could get something going with that. You know, it just amazes me, Bunny. I mean, I'm slowly inching towards the end of my time, but I wanted to give you and the viewers out there, if they want to get a hold of you or get some answers. I don't have all the answers on cable, and I've had a few emails come in, Bunny, and they have questions that we may not be able to get into. I want to get them a hold of you. It's acommunitytv.org.
And also, I was told there's going to be a meeting at Town Hall on February 8th
Yes.
where people can go and voice their complaints.
Mm-hmm.
And, I encourage people who have complaints to show up to the meeting and voice their complaints, but I also would encourage them to write down their complaints, okay? So they have a written record of it there, just even if it's a short paragraph or whatever. But it's really important because these are things that we can put on the record. That will be a televised meeting. I can ask for a recording of it. And that's the thing. I can take into Capitol Hill and I can say, look what they're doing in this town in Massachusetts, and I think that's really important. And I think it's also important to encourage your selectmen there to stand up to them. And they're not going to want to stand up to them unless they hear from the folks, on the ground, unless they hear from the folks in the community. So you can reach us at acommunitytv.org, acommunitytv.org. And, if you got some great, awful horror stories to tell, please do contact us. You can go to acommunitytv.org and send us a comment. And I love, like I said, I like walking in with that stuff and laying it on somebody's desk and saying, look at what they're doing.
Yeah, right, right. There's the reality on the ground, right? Bunny Rydell, great to have you as always. I'd like to reach back out to you maybe in a week or two. We'll see what's going on. I definitely want to update you on the meeting that we'll have here on the 8th. I'm going to make every effort to be there, so
Yeah.
I'll get you some updates. And if anybody needs to get a hold or stories to Bunny, just email us right here at timmcgary at gmail.com, and I can forward them off also. Thank you
great.
so much for being here, Bunny. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much, Gary.
All right.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay. It's been a busy on the Newsmaker line tonight. Very busy. Emails come in. I'm going to respond to those. Some of those questions that you're sending in, I don't know the technicalities and to get into them. I'm going to forward them over to Bunny for you, and I will be a conduit between the two of you until we can hook the two of you up. But you got some great questions that are out there. Wow, quick hour, folks. Hour just kind of flies by. I had a lot of stuff that I wanted to get into. I won't be able to obviously get into all of it. I'm going to have to put that over there. There is a Northbridge Community TV survey that you can find. It's on the Facebook. If you go to facebook.com/NorthbridgeTV, you will be able to find it. It's got questions in it. It's actually got a whole lot of questions in it. And love to get some feedback from you and see what that looks like. I'll certainly go, and I will take this when I get home tonight. And we'd like to get some input on that. I say we, they, but help NCTV provide you with the best possible experience. Answer a few questions. Limited just to Northbridge residents and business owners, please. So that goes on to that. All right. I want you to know, and I'll get into this next time, there is a move. The state has a plan to revive a native endangered species on a remote island in the Quabbin Reservoir. They want to breed and raise 150 venomous Timberland rattlesnakes until they're good and strong, and then they're going to turn them loose on the protected land in the middle of the Quabbin Reservoir. So what could go wrong? Because it's in the middle of a reservoir, right? Here's what could go wrong, and I'll get into it next week. I want to do something else before we go, but these snakes can swim. So they can leave the island and they can come and they can visit you. How would you like that? Only in Massachusetts. All right, let me talk about guns for just a minute here. I've been crunching some numbers. I've been doing some things. I've got papers spread out all over the place. So you'd think this was NBC. But on guns, we've had about 13,000 people that were murdered with guns in 2015. There are more guns in America than people, some people will claim, and others say it's a little bit less. But reports say between 30 and 40% of people at least own one gun or live with someone that may own a gun. So that's what, a good 120 million, I guess. I'm guessing, looking at some of these stats here, million people, something like that. Because let's ask this question. So because 13 million, thank God not, because 13,000 people were murdered in a country that's got 320 million people in it, who own somewhere around 270 to 340 million guns. We're told we have a gun problem? Really? I think we have a government problem. For context, let me throw some of these things out at you. The CDC claims that 90,000 people died last year from excessive alcohol use. Is there a war on alcohol? Not a right to be able to drink alcohol, is it? Is it your right? No, but it's your right to own a gun. 20,000 people were killed in vehicles. You have no right, I guess, to have a vehicle, but then again, I can't stand that argument, so I'll stop there. 480,000 deaths related to tobacco in the United States alone in a year. There's no war on it. There's just a taxing frenzy on it. That's all there is. So why does the left have a war on guns? Guns aren't the biggest problem out there. Guns aren't killing the most people. And you can add that number of 13,000. You can swell it up to, depending upon what you read, 27, 28, some even 30,000 gun deaths. When they do that, unfortunately, for statistical reasons, they include suicides. Guns are the number one form of use for suicides. So when you boil all those numbers down, you're talking about 13,000 people in a country with 320 million people, with close to that, give or take 30 to 40,000 guns in the country. And you tell me that we have to listen to campaigns, to commercials, to speeches on House floor, to cities, to states, towns even, the national government, Obama himself, talking about guns all the time and how evil and bad they are. I don't think he's held a press conference on not smoking, has he? Has he held a press conference that he wants to get rid of cars because so many people die in vehicles? So on purpose, 13,000 people are killed in a country of 320 million people. The country has a constitution which guarantees the right to own a gun. People want to argue that guns are a states' rights issue. Guns are not a states' rights issue. Guns are a federally guaranteed right. A chief of police does not have the actual right, unless you circumvent the Constitution, to decide if a town or person can own a firearm. It's not a states' rights issue. It's like freedom of speech isn't a states' right issue. A state can't say that there's not going to be freedom of speech. There's no freedom of expression. You can't vote unless you pay a tax in Northbridge. Can you do that? No. But the Northbridge police chief could say, and thank goodness he doesn't, and hopefully whoever the next chief is would continue that. We have a great track record with a great police department when it comes to civil rights, to be honest with you, and it comes to constitutional rights. They're a good department. But we're lucky. A lot of people don't live in towns like that. There are towns in America where the police chief says, no guns. And that's it. The Second Amendment now means nothing. That's why I don't think that it's such a states' rights issue. I just think that we need some kind of reality, some kind of levity to put in place to make something happen here, because I'm going to be quite honest with you, the gun debate is insanity. Look at there are now moves to remove gun rights from veterans, from people that serve the United States of America in the crosshairs of the Obama administration. This is all over 13,000 deaths. If it was someone in my family or me, would I be upset about it? You betcha I would. But the reality is that 13,000 people are killed by guns in a country with 320 million people and arguably as many guns. What gives? I'll tell you what gives. They don't want you armed. That's what they don't want. All right, we're out of time. This is the Freedom Network. My name is Gary Rosenberg. Had a blast doing the show today. Lots of action and some guests. We will be back next week. 3 on 11 comes up right after this program, so stay right there because lots more coming up, and you'll probably hear lots more about cable coming up. My name's Gary Rosenberg. I will see you next week.